By early 1944, the Western Front had become a chessboard of deception. After D-Day, Allied forces advanced through France, but progress was slow. The Germans had fortified river crossings, hedgerows, and towns with machine gun nests and artillery. Every Allied movement was observed. Every buildup of troops was countered. Commanders needed a way to mislead the enemy, to make them believe that entire divisions existed where none did. That idea would give birth to one of the most unusual military units of the Second World War, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, later known simply as the Ghost Army. The 23rd was officially activated in January 1944. It consisted of around 1,100 men, not frontline soldiers, but artists, designers, radio engineers, and sound technicians. Many came from New York's art schools, advertising agencies, and film studios. Some had worked in Hollywood before the war. Now, their task was to use those same creative skills to fool the German military intelligence system. Their commander, Colonel Harry Reeder, understood that deception could be as powerful as artillery. Instead of fighting with bullets, these men would fight with illusions, inflatable tanks, recorded sounds of marching troops, and false radio chatter. It was a weapon of confusion, built entirely from art and engineering. The Ghost Army's operations were based on 4 pillars: visual deception, sonic deception, radio deception, and special effects. Each mission began with reconnaissance, studying the terrain, the habits of nearby German observers, and the expected routes of Allied movements. Once the information was gathered, the team moved in quietly, often at night. Within hours, empty fields became bustling military camps. Inflatable Sherman tanks and jeeps were positioned in formation. Camouflage nets, fake tire tracks, and dummy artillery created the illusion of an armored division preparing for battle. From a distance, and even from the air, it looked entirely real. Then came the sound. Teams used powerful speakers mounted on half-tracks to broadcast hours of pre-recorded sounds, engines rumbling, men shouting, metallic clanking, even the echo of tank treads over gravel. The recordings were layered and timed precisely, creating the impression of thousands of troops assembling. The deception had to be flawless. If a single German patrol discovered that the tanks were made of rubber, the illusion would collapse, and the men could be captured or killed. Therefore, every movement was calculated. Every sound and prop placement was cross-checked against real army formations to ensure consistency. Even the radio operators took part, trained to mimic the communication styles of real units. They transmitted false messages day and night, knowing that German intelligence routinely intercepted Allied radio traffic. The Ghost Army's first major test came during Operation Brest, in August 1944. As the U.S. 6th Armored Division fought to capture the French port city, the Ghost Army moved in behind them. Their mission, to make it appear that an entire armored division was preparing to attack from the north, when in reality, no such force existed. They inflated hundreds of dummy vehicles, set up false artillery, and ran continuous sound broadcasts through the night. From a distance, German scouts reported massed Allied armor north of the city. Consequently, enemy forces diverted artillery and infantry to counter a threat that didn't exist, easing pressure on the real American attack from the south. For the first time, illusion had reshaped the battlefield. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops had proven that deception could save lives and win ground without a single shot fired. By early 1945, the Allies had pushed the Germans back to the Rhine River, Hitler's last major defensive line. If the Allies could cross it, the road to Berlin would be open. But the Germans expected that. They had fortified the Rhine, prepared artillery, and mined every bridge and road. A direct assault would cost thousands of lives. So the U.S. command turned again to a small, secret unit, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army. Their mission was simple on paper but nearly impossible in reality. Convince the Germans that the main Allied attack would happen miles away from where it actually would. This deception was codenamed Operation Viersen. To pull it off, about 1,100 artists, sound engineers, and radio operators had to simulate an entire armored division, roughly 40,000 men. They had almost no protection. If the Germans discovered what they were doing, they'd be wiped out in minutes. Every detail had to look real. They painted fake unit markings on trucks, built hundreds of inflatable Sherman tanks, and even created false headquarters signs to mislead enemy spies. During the day, They positioned decoy tanks and artillery under camouflage nets. At night, they moved everything again, making it look like a real army preparing to attack. Sound engineers from Hollywood and radio studios had recorded actual tank convoys, artillery, and troop movements. Now, using massive loudspeakers mounted on jeeps, they blasted those recordings across the German lines. The noise carried for miles, engines rumbling, metal clanking, men shouting orders. To enemy scouts, it sounded exactly like a division gathering for an assault. At the same time, radio teams sent out false messages using authentic US call signs. German intelligence was listening. Every message, every fake coordinate, was part of the illusion. From the air, German reconnaissance photographed what they believed was a massive buildup of American forces. Rows of tanks, truck convoys, bridges under construction, all fake. The deception worked perfectly. German commanders shifted their artillery and infantry to face this phantom army near Viersen. Meanwhile, 30 miles south, the real US 9th Army began its actual crossing of the Rhine. By the time the Germans realized what had happened, the Allies were already across the river. The Rhine, the last major natural barrier to Germany, had fallen. Operation Viersen was one of the most successful tactical deceptions of the entire war. It saved thousands of Allied lives and shortened the campaign in Western Europe. But for the men of the Ghost Army, it was another mission they could never talk about. No medals, no headlines, just orders to move on to the next illusion. They had won a battle without firing a shot, and soon they would be sent on their final assignment, one that would push the idea of deception further than ever before. After the Rhine crossing, the German front collapsed. But the war wasn't over. Hitler's armies still fought fiercely, and chaos spread across collapsing lines. For the Ghost Army, the next mission would be their most dangerous yet, and their last. It was late March 1945. The US 9th Army was advancing through Germany, facing unpredictable resistance. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops were ordered to perform one final deception, to divert German attention away from the real crossing of the Elbe River. The codename, Operation Brest. By now, these men were experts in illusion. They could build an entire armored division overnight, tanks, trucks, artillery, all from canvas and air. But this time, they were deep inside Germany. Enemy patrols were nearby, and air raids were constant. They set up along open fields, inflating decoy tanks under artillery fire. The ground trembled with every explosion. Radio operators transmitted fake division orders, while sound crews played the roar of engines echoing through the valleys. Once again, they were bait, drawing the enemy's eyes and fire away from real American forces. For 3 days, they held the illusion. Shells landed within meters of their positions. A single discovery could have meant annihilation. But the Germans never realized what was happening. The 9th Army crossed the Elbe with minimal losses. The war in Europe was nearly over. In May 1945, Germany surrendered. The Ghost Army was disbanded quietly. No public acknowledgement, no medals, no headlines. Their missions were classified for more than 50 years. Most of the men went home, returning to lives that seemed small compared to the illusions they had built. Some became artists, designers, engineers. The skills they had used to fight a war now turned to creation, not deception. They were sworn to secrecy. Even their families didn't know what they had done. Their war, the war of imagination, vanished into silence. Decades passed before their story resurfaced. In the 1990s, the US Army finally declassified their operations. Historians began piecing together reports, photos, and audio recordings long buried in archives. It was then that the scale of their contribution became clear. The Ghost Army had saved tens of thousands of lives, not by killing the enemy, but by deceiving him. In 2013, the US Congress officially recognized the unit's service. And in 2022, the Ghost Army was finally awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, one of America's highest honors. For the few surviving members, it was a moment they had waited a lifetime to see. The recognition wasn't for victory in battle. It was for creativity, courage, and the belief that art could save lives. Their legacy stands as proof that wars aren't won by strength alone. Sometimes, it takes imagination to outfight an empire. And so, the Ghost Army faded once more into history. Their tanks were air, their guns were paint, but their courage was real.